So come up, Roberto. And we have one participant who'll be joining us by Zoom, but Julie, maybe you can be the person who leads us off this afternoon.
Shall I start then?
Yes, thank you. You can start, absolutely.
Thank you, Frances, and thank you to the Bankinter Foundation team for making this excellent event happening. Today I will be sharing a few insights from my work with multi-stakeholder initiatives and multinational food and beverage companies. Examples include a beverage multinational with over 200 brands and in 180 countries, the UNCCD, the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, working with the major food traders and banks funding the food industry. And since 2019, the GCRF Trade Hub, which is led by the UNEP WCMC in collaboration with over 50 partners, including governments, policymakers, research institutions, private companies, financial institutions, and multilateral actors such as the World Trade Organization. My role was that of transferring knowledge between different stakeholders and defining strategies to enhance traceability and sustainability of key supply chains with the three pillars of sustainability: social, economic, and environmental. So to start, I would like to very briefly remind what traceability is, because in the food industry, there's some confusion between origin discovery, supply chain mapping, and traceability. So traceability means recording, ideally in real time, data about really relevant events in all stages of supply chains, including the geolocation of the sites where the products are not only produced, but also processed, the conditions in which raw materials are manipulated, the volumes, the quality of these volumes, the energy and water consumed, the labor conditions, and many other details that are relevant to inform key decision-making processes at different stages of the supply chains. Whether we wanted to accept it or not, many of the agricultural products we consume are linked to deforestation, child labor, water depletion, and avoidable CO2 emissions, among other negative impacts. These are not only social and environmental issues, but also economic risks, because the ecosystems and communities food supply chains depend on for the long-term continuity of operations are at the risk of not being able to produce anymore. As we all know, deforestation, land conversion, and ecosystem depletion leads to soil erosion, climate change, which in turn leads to a considerable drop in soil productivity. We have already lost 420 million hectares of forest, most of which is driven by agricultural expansion and cattle raising. The United Nations Plan Action to combat desertification alarmed already in 1991 that the rate of land turning to zero or negative net economic productivity was of 21 million hectares annually and increasing. Additionally, agricultural expansion provokes the displacement of thousands of species which cannot survive outside their original ecosystem because animals are territorial and are likely not to be welcome in new territories. Now, we can see very cute child in the pictures. 152 million children today are still in child labor, and 71% of them are found in the agriculture sector, and this is happening today. This leads to poor child health and education, and compromises the livelihoods and prosperity of future generations. And last but not least, water usage in different tiers of supply chains is another factor that food and beverage companies want to track to invest in optimizing the use and guaranteeing long-term access. So the question is, can we do something to manage and mitigate these risks, which are real? This is not about just campaigning, and this is real data, science-based data, and there's reports that demonstrate them. So the answer, fortunately, is yes, we can act, and we can be part of the solution. And the design of effective solutions depend on access to strategic and accurate supply chain data. So end-to-end traceability enables key decision makers to identify the locations and involved actors in hotspots that put at risk the sustainability of supply chains, which, with access to supply chain data and traceability data, we can know where and with whom we need to work and invest in turning supply chains more resilient. But attention, what should inform strategic, brave investments? So this data needs to inform brave investments rather than coward divestments. What I want to say with that, if what we do when we identify a problem is to divest and marginalize the unsustainable actor, we are sending the wrong message. We are provoking fear of sharing data and in turn blocking the implementation of traceability. So it is crucial to build trust across supply chains by sending the message, we want to know more about you to help you, rather than we want to know more about you, and if you are doing the things wrong, we will chase you and we will exclude you. So we need to be very supportive at all stages of the supply chain. And this will in fact be one of the big challenges when facing the implementation of the new EUDR. I don't know if you are all familiar with it. So will the European importers help their suppliers demonstrate compliance with the new anti-deforestation requirements, or will they go through the easy path of excluding non-sustainable or non-compliant suppliers and leaving the problem to leak toward less restrictive markets? This is the big question, right? We have the choice to decide how we are acting when we identify the problem. If we want effective solutions, we need to work collaboratively in globally applicable mechanisms that drive systemic change. And this is where we are talking about today, right? We want to look for systemic solutions and not like isolated and very niche solutions for one specific problem. So how's the industry perceiving traceability? In many debates, I hear that traceability is too expensive to be implemented. Well, traceability implementation requires a huge amount of human resources and capacity building, but the cost of the systems themselves are easily compensated by all the benefits that traceability provides, because technology isn't expensive per se. So enhanced traceability prevents future economic and reputational losses, facilitates resource optimization not only in terms of materials, but also in terms of timing, better inventory management, waste reduction, access to new and stricter markets, reliable justification of premium prices, faster recalls, and many others. Additionally, if data systems are set in a standardized way at the industry level, they can enable the structuring of market incentive schemes to fund the transition towards more sustainable practices. More than a technological challenge, because technology already exists and can do almost anything, traceability is a challenge in terms of people's engagement, people's willingness, people's awareness, and people's capacity. It's all about people. It's a transformational and innovative process that requires a mindset change first, and we need to work with people. So many supply chain actors are afraid of sharing data because they fear potential unintended consequences. And the truth is that traceability can indeed be a double-edged sword. If data isn't employed with the spirit of supporting those who are not yet ready to comply with new regulations and requirements, we won't reach the goal. So traceability is a very long journey. It requires engagement of multiple stakeholders, starting with farmers, who need to register data on farm polygons, land ownership, farming practices, and other data in order to assess the environmental impacts linked to production, and to define strategies that allow us to create value for farmers in the form of better livelihoods. Better livelihoods through increased productivity, reduction of input costs, and overall better prices for them, because we can see how the prices in supermarkets are rising, but the prices that are paid to farmers are not rising. So there is a gap in there, and we were discussing about the pricing system that it will need a very good review indeed. And so I recently arrived from Asia. This was part of my work with WWF and the UNEP, the United Nations Trade Hub. We organized a series of online and in-person workshops focused on the traceability of soy, beef, and palm oil. And we discussed with governments, heads of rural districts, farmer associations, and the private sector, because we wanted to better understand what are the barriers for them to capture and share data, and also what are the desired outcomes from traceability. We want to listen to them, and we want to design solutions that take into account their opinions and needs from the inception, before defining new policies, before defining new tools. It was quite surprising to find out that in some areas, there are still basic needs, such as access to good quality seeds, something very basic and that we would need, that it should be easy, better capacity building to implement more productive farming practices, because it is surprising that some agricultural commodities, as the ones I mentioned, palm oil, soy, and beef, are very strong and very profitable downstream. But upstream, what we find is millions of independent farmers and smallholders who don't have access to data to make good strategic decisions, and they just act based on word-of-mouth recommendations. So traceability should act as a backbone that connects farmers and manufacturers and retailers to help them be more efficient and profitable. And this is something traceability can help with. And just to end, just to remind, and here we have representatives from different sectors, that effective traceability implementation requires engagement and action from multiple stakeholders. Policymakers, on the one hand, should define aligned public policies, both in consuming and producing countries, that not only require enhanced supply chain traceability, but also mobilize the resources to implement traceability, because it is very easy to make mandatory to trace supply chains, but there's a need for resources to make this happen. Then technology companies have a very important role also in defining and designing tools that are based on common standards, data and communication standards, so that the different actors employing different solutions can integrate their solutions, and we can have access to all the supply chain data. Because at the end, the effectiveness of one single tool will depend on how broadly this tool is adopted across supply chains. We cannot aim or force everybody to use the same tool, because there's commercial competitiveness, but we can try to make sure that all the different tools that are developed in the market are integrable and use the same data indicators. Then certification schemes. Here it was raised this morning, the relevance of certification schemes. They have a very relevant role to play also in terms of making traceability a requirement, a strong requirement, but also facilitating access to the data that they already have. So certification schemes have been gathering data on supply chain sustainability during decades, but they hold it privately in their databases, and it's kind of their asset. If we aim for end-to-end supply chain traceability, we need to make data accessible, at least for the specific actors who need to take key decisions. Then financial institutions could grant better access to finance. This is a huge issue for farmers. They don't have access to formal finance and access to preferential conditions for farmers who share data and demonstrate good sustainability performance. Manufacturers, brands, and retailers could make traceability mandatory in their supplier codes of conduct and then co-invest where necessary. And finally, last but not least, NGOs should promote multi-stakeholder alignment and engagement while guiding implementation at different tiers. So I will leave it here, and I will be happy to discuss further during the Q&A time. Thank you.